and go. So I am so pleased that you can come. And as I say, if we are recording this as a conversation among the three of us, that means I get to hear even more about your lives. So Claire, before you got on, I was asking Sarah, I had seen on social media that she was recording on radio again earlier today. So I wanted to hear about which project are you doing on the radio and what is coming up next for you in Scotland and elsewhere.
Yeah. Today we were on the afternoon show on BBC Radio Scotland, talking about a new piece that I've created with my collaborator called Two in a Barrel, which is a show that's for family audiences. That's all about these two pals who live in this barrel on top of an island of rubbish and trash. And they love kind of sifting through, finding all these treasures in this kind of trash around them. But the mass of that mess keeps rising higher and higher and threatening to cover them all together. And so they have to do something about it. So it's a play that's very much about kind of eco-consciousness. And when we throw our rubbish away, it's out of sight, out of mind, but where does it end up going? And what is our kind of part in that process? And it's great fun. It's physical theater and clowning, and it's really visual, and there's puppets, and it's really, really good fun.
You're muted, Beth. That sounds really cool, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I wanted to know where all you're going, because you tour with that, right? I think I've seen you do that on like the Isle of Skye or Lewis or somewhere at one point. Weren't you on Stornoway doing a session?
Yeah, well, we're going to be up in Shetland and Orkney on this tour, and we'll be in Inverness, and we'll be in areas like Dunbeath and Ray Village Hall. So we'll be in village halls, but then we'll also be on sort of big stages and stuff. We'll be at the Edinburgh Science Festival on Saturday, kicking off our tour. And it's so exciting to get to take it all around and just get to bring it to people all across the country.
Well, I will tell you, I frequently tell our students from SOC that we have a near perfect track record of our SOC alums who go to the UK and Ireland. Don't come back. That's not true. I can think of one exception to this rule. There's nothing to say that once she finishes her doctorate, she won't go back. Well, if I limit it to the UK, you've all stayed. If I add in Ireland, well, no, because she was in Northern Ireland. So we'll give it 50-50. We had somebody who came back from Northern Ireland to do her doctorate. We'll see whether she stays.
Yeah, Scotland does that to you. You kind of come, well, I guess so many places do, don't they? You come to a new place and
three in London.
You love it. Yeah. Wow.
And Catherine Bickle Barlow was also at the Edinburgh Festival. So I kind of think of the Edinburgh Festival as now a Northwestern, it is a Northwestern offshoot. So many.
Yeah, it's a good place to be, especially in the creative arts. It's the place for the world to descend upon. So to be living so close to there, or for you, Claire, actually living there in Edinburgh, you have it on your doorstep. It's amazing.
I can't wait for Fringe. It's going to be crazy.
So Claire, now that we've heard Sarah's most recent artistic antics north of Hadrian's Wall, fill me and us. We've had a couple people join in on what all you've been doing this year.
I'm just a student. I'm lowly in comparison, but I study at the University of Edinburgh, and my area of interest is kind of climate change studies, but from a diverse range of perspectives. It's into engineering or economics and a lot of politics this year, which is fun. My program is called MSc in carbon management.
So can you talk a little bit, just seeing at least one of the other people who popped on, a little bit about how you divided your studies between what you did in Cambridge and what you're doing in Edinburgh, and what you think the sort of distinctive features of your Edinburgh experience have been?
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know who's on, I'm on the Marshall Scholarship. So I get 2 years in the UK. Some people can do 1, and some people actually can extend it for a PhD, but mine is 2 years, 2 different masters, with the first master's in Cambridge in more of an engineering field, which is in energy technology, and then the second master's now in Edinburgh, which is more on kind of economics and politics and science related to climate change. And what else am I saying? Kind of the distinctive features of my time in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
I would say kind of some of the key ones are the Highlands, which are just awesome because that's kind of my highlight, is always going up and going hiking, but just also the hills in Edinburgh. The nature is just top tier. And then I play a lot of football, so being on the football team is a highlight for me. And then I'd say how cool the university is in terms of the fact that it's kind of really integrated with the city. It's really interesting and very different than Cambridge, and I like it quite a bit.
And now I'd like to sort of rotate between the two of you in terms of what the structure of your educational experiences have been like. So Claire, you were in Cambridge and then in Edinburgh, and you were actually doing courses, whereas Sarah was a Fulbrighter who was sort of structuring her own experience. But if we could talk, if we could start with your course in Edinburgh, Claire, and if you could just tell us sort of how that was built, like how that was structured, what you came into it with, what was new, and then if you had some form of capstone at the end of the year, what that's like.
Yeah, so we had one term in the fall where I was taking 3 courses that were kind of just mandatory part of the program that everyone in my little cohort of about 30 or so people were taking. And then this term, we also took 3 courses. One of them, again, was with the cohort, but after that, you kind of branched off and got to choose. So the ones in the fall were, I think, economics, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and then just one that was kind of on energy technology. Then the required one this year was on business. It was quite cool. The woman who taught it is like this epic startup woman. And then my other 2 classes I got to choose, and they were both on climate change politics. And they've been some of the best classes I've ever taken. They're so interesting. And then I'm kind of wrapping them up. I've got final essays due at the end of the month. And after that, I just fully switched to a dissertation, which is kind of the capstone that you're talking about. And with most top programs like mine, even though you take courses throughout, you do have to do a dissertation over the summer. I had that at Cambridge last year, and this year is the same. The cool thing about this program is that they were really encouraging about partnering with companies. So I'm kind of working with a company for my capstone dissertation. And I can talk more about it if you want, but in terms of like what I kind of brought into the program, it was really helpful for me that I had a background in like science and engineering and economics, but tons of people in my program didn't. And a lot of people came in with things like a biomedical background and were completely learning things fresh. So there's a lot of diversity in terms of what people are bringing to the table. And that made the conversation super interesting in class. Yeah, anything else you want to know about?
Oh, I always have more things I want to know about, but I want to give Sarah a chance, because Sarah, I tell your story frequently about how you designed your sort of path through the UK on your Fulbright. But I want you to tell it now, and now I'll have a recording of it, so it won't be dependent on my interpretation of the future.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, Claire, gosh, that's amazing. That sounds so incredible. Your program sounds so cool, and like you've really made it what you want it to be too. Which always feels like such a big part of these kinds of opportunities, isn't it? They're sort of built and put out there, and then, yeah, how you engage with it is what makes them really magical. For me, yeah, I had sort of quite a different route, I think, to becoming a Fulbrighter, in the sense that I had an amazing time at Northwestern University studying theater and was really interested in a lot of devising work and collaborative work that was very much geared around how theater was creating social change. And I did the Circumnavigator Award, which let me travel completely around the world to different countries to learn about how theater was being used. And that very much informed my practice. So after graduating from Northwestern with all of that sort of ticking around in my head, I went out into the world and started working and started making plays and teaching and learning more. So it was kind of later on for me that I recognized that a lot of my practice, I was really keen to kind of get back into studies again, to take what I was doing already in practice and be able to expand my knowledge of my work. So I applied for the Fulbright to have a chance to go to the UK and study what's called devising theater, where you create work collaboratively, new original pieces that are very much informed by the people in the room, to create a story or a piece that is very much reflective of those individuals and their talents and skills. And what was kind of wild about it, and I guess what you're maybe referencing as well, is that I applied for one of the open grants. So as opposed to applying through one of the universities to do their program specifically, with the open grant, I was able to basically craft my own master's program, where I reached out to specific theaters that were doing the kind of work that was focused around an area that I was really keen to be studying, and basically got myself set up in a way that I could learn from those companies, but they served almost as different classes or courses, because one company was very much about site-specific work. Another company was very much about visual theater and, puppetry and shadows. And another company was doing very much work centered around ethnographic research and performance. So how we use people's original stories and experiences to create characters and worlds. So I took all those different pieces and created my own program. And it was amazing. And then, of course, after a year of study, I had all these amazing contacts with professional companies that were doing the work I was passionate about. And it meant that it sort of opened the door to being able to actually call Scotland my home and come back out here with an artist visa to continue my work.
So one of the things I love about having the two of you is that, to my mind, you each sort of emblemize part of the specificity of what one can do in the UK more broadly, but you happen to have done it in Scotland. So you've got that particularity. And it's the time of year, as you both may remember, where I'm talking to a lot of students about how to put those building blocks together of what would look like a program of study for themselves, and thinking about identifying particular programs and how they might fit together, whether as part of an overarching project like you, Sarah, or whether taking a series of degree programs through a couple of years, like the Marshall permits with Claire. So, Claire seems to have frozen and is now coming back. Which means I'm going to ask you to start, Sarah, in terms of how you approached identifying those partnership companies and thinking about fostering those relationships, because there's a lot of intimidation factor, particularly among the rising seniors, about, I'm supposed, I need to contact these people for a letter, and how do I do that, and what's going to happen.
Oh, that's such a good question, and such an important one too, in thinking about how you get that partnership support to be able to find those specific people and organizations and companies and experts in the field that you're really interested in learning about. The biggest piece of advice I could give is certainly just to go for it and be bold, and send that email along. I did a lot of my way of making contacts really spread across the spectrum, from literally going on someone's website and filling in the contact me form with information about, hi, I love the kind of stuff you're doing. My name's Sarah Rose. I'm really interested in this. And I would love to have the chance to speak with you, to see if there might be an opportunity to do some teaming up together in some way, shape, or form. Two, on the other side of that spectrum, having my own kind of network of contacts who then were able to directly put me in touch with that person that, was very generous and kind in giving their time and energy towards letting me speak to them, and beginning to foster that relationship. I always tend to use a little bit of that like 3 email rule of like sending that first email, making sure I've done the research on what that company or that individual does so that I know why I'm reaching out to them and explaining why I might be worth some of their, 30 minutes of their time to chat, as well as a little bit more about my background and why I've connected to it. If they don't get back or respond, I usually ask, a friendly follow-up, just saying hello again and seeing if there's an opportunity to say hi. And then if after the 3rd time, being able to just see if there's another route, another way to talk to somebody else that might actually have, an opportunity lined up for you that you might not know about.
Claire, I know you had popped off and popped back on, and
Sorry about that.
No, I just didn't track exactly. I was hoping that you could talk, particularly because you did spend time at 2 different universities, how you thought about that when you were applying to do it, and then sort of reflection on it now in terms of how that, juxtaposition of programs worked out.
Yeah, sorry for popping off, by the way. My laptop just decided it was going to KO for a little bit, so we're on the phone now. In terms of choosing programs, I was interested in having a kind of a diverse experience. And from talking to other scholars here now, I think a lot of people agree that the diversity is a great way to go. For some people, they just want to stay in maybe the Cambridge Oxford bubble, or for other people, they want to just stay in London for 2 years. But I think it's pretty cool to experience kind of that Cambridge Oxford, very unique, very fancy environment, and then to also get to be up in Scotland, to be in a completely different country, but also like more surrounded by nature, more surrounded by a city. Like for me, I chose Cambridge and Edinburgh because of their programs specifically, in addition just to this contrast. I think that you should kind of focus on the programs, not just the place or the school. So I really wanted the Cambridge program because it was an energy technologies program that was not going to focus just on sustainability. It was still going to give a background on coal and natural gas and nuclear and everything, because I thought it was important to understand all of it. And then the program up here in Scotland, I knew I was going to have the ability to really have a huge diversity in terms of the politics, the economics, the science, and I was going to be able to do it in a capital where I've had access to talks by politicians, which has been super cool and relevant. So anyways, in summary, I think it's great to get this diversity. I think it's great to kind of experience Southern England, but then also be up north. But I would say focusing on the programs is very important too.
So Emma, I hope you noticed that the recording light is on. I want to offer you an option. If you would like me to turn it off before you start asking questions, I am happy to do that. If you are comfortable asking questions and allowing them to be useful to future viewers, that's okay too, but I want to honor your preference. Except we can't hear you. Oh, look. So on my screen, it looks like you're muted, which maybe you just did as you were dealing with your.
How about now?
Great. Now we can hear you.
Wait, I can't hear you now. Sorry. Could someone try to say something?
I did say something.
Okay, now I think it's working. Sorry, my speaker is really weird. But so lovely to meet both of you, and yes, feel free to keep the recording on. I guess I was wondering, Sarah, for you, I was also kind of interested in like maybe
I think we're losing just a little bit of you. Do you mind repeating that again? Oh, sorry, Emma. Is that working? Oops, I can't hear you at the moment, but I do see your.
Could you hear my question before?
I hear you now.
Okay.
Should we try again?
Yes. Did you hear my question or no?
I did not hear your question.
Okay.
Sorry
I'm
about
so
that.
sorry. I was just wondering, so I know that I'm kind of interested in maybe like crafting my own program as well. And I was wondering like how early on in like the application cycle did you start reaching out to people and like, yeah, I guess narrowing down what you want, like casting a wide net, but then like deciding on the letters of affiliation, like the people you actually wanted to do your work with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what you just said there about casting a wide net and then kind of sort of honing things down was a really helpful method that I certainly used. Part of that made it really about who actually was able to get back. I only reached out to people that I was interested in working with to begin in that process. And then some of that was just the logistics of people that were really lovely, but the timeline didn't work with what project was happening when. So it didn't mean that I could end up connecting my Fulbright to and my research to the work they were doing. But others, it lined up perfectly. Some of those connections that I made were months before that application was submitted, and others were literally like down to the wire. Just the joys of how things kind of time out. That being said, I spent months before really researching what it was that I wanted, but it was through a lot of conversations and through even those emails where if it didn't work out with that one company or that person specifically that I was really keen to talk to for my research, they often were really generous in putting me in touch with other people. So there were a lot of surprises along the way of where I started with my application in terms of drafts of it and what I wanted to study, and the theme and the topic stayed the same, but the people I was working with became more shaped based on what was going to be possible with people's schedules and programs and how things were working for those individuals by the time I submitted the application. Does that answer that question for you?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. And then I was also kind of wondering, Claire, for you, so I'm also interested in more of like sustainability, environmental work, but more from like the medical perspective. And I was just wondering, like, are any of the students in your cohort kind of coming at sustainability from that like angle, or have you heard of any maybe programs in the area that that are like similar to that? I'm less interested in like the coal stuff that you had mentioned before, although that does sound fascinating, but not quite my realm of expertise.
Yeah, I'm
Just
gonna
because I've heard about your project, I think it would be useful for Claire to know particularly what medical sustainability means in terms of your particular research with devices and so forth, so she could think about that with her peers and programs.
Yeah. So I'm a biomedical engineering major, and I'm looking at it more from like a device design perspective. So like, how can I make things like the different instruments that that surgeons use more sustainable, more and trying to stay away from single-use devices into more reusable devices.
Okay, I'm really glad you clarified that because I did not know it.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's super clear. It sounds like you're talking about kind of like circular economy, and
Yes.
things related almost kind of like in a startup aspect of kind of creating your own designs and even business related to that. And in that respect, there's lots to offer at the University of Edinburgh. A lot of my peers are in a circular economy class right now, and the climate change business class that I'm in currently, I feel like you would love, because we kind of had the opportunity to we were literally prompted, if you were to start your own business, what would it be? And then we just spent a whole class talking about how to make that business sustainable. So for you, I mean, it would have been a no-brainer. You would have talked about your medical instruments and would have gone off on it. And then you could have done kind of some of your essays about that as well. So I think there's opportunities here. I think particularly within the startup culture, there is like a sustainability startup culture that exists at the University of Edinburgh that I'm more than happy to try and connect you with if you want to. I can try and like shoot you some emails on that one. But lots of people who have an interest in that I bet you would fit in with. Pretty cool.
Amazing. Okay, that would be great. Yeah, if possible. So from what I'm understanding, it sounds like people come at it more from like the startup realm and less from like the biomedical science realm, if that makes sense.
Simply because the class that I was in was climate change and business, it was going to be business oriented rather than science oriented. But would have to kind of look into it and see if there are other classes that are more I don't know, focused on what you're interested in. But it's not something that I've come across.
Gotcha.
Not saying that means it doesn't
Okay.
exist.
So there used to be a program in Cambridge that was biotech and had links to companies and startups. I don't know how much they focused on the sustainability, but again, just like Claire did sort of the engineering piece in Cambridge and then the environmental and startup in Edinburgh, potentially that has that might have a parallel structure for you, Emma. And Sarah, I know you, I mean, I realize that you are from theater, not from science by your academic training, but I know you actually, because I follow you on social media, and you were talking about the Science Festival, I know you've spent a lot of time actually working with science-related industries in the UK.
Yeah.
And do you have any sense of either sort of centers of activity in Scotland or elsewhere in the UK that those of us who are not on the ground going to all of these business fairs, conferences, and so forth might not be as aware of?
It's so, yeah, I'm loving this conversation because of all the ways we kind of access it. Yeah, there obviously, you know, in Glasgow, we just recently had COP26. And so it was an amazing opportunity for, again, the world to sort of descend with people from all around, but also an opportunity for different organizations to really have a platform here in Scotland. I would certainly recommend taking a look at the list of people who came along to that. And I know we were doing performances and work that was in connection with a lot of those amazing groups, but also with certain companies that have sort of work that they're doing focused specifically on looking at how they're making those businesses more sustainable and going straight to the company versus maybe even the academic route. I was doing presenting work for the company Dettol that is looking at hygiene and soap and how we take care of our planet by keeping ourselves healthy. The healthier and cleaner we are, you know, being able to think about how that's affecting the rest of the world. So there might even be some other interesting avenues to go down that are through those actual, you know, industries and companies that are actually crafting things that might have opportunity for you to tie into some of their research.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Since you both mentioned the Scots Islands in your narrations at the beginning of this, and Emma, I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly when I saw your name pop on the call, but since I spent much of my, shall we say, fantasy life disappearing again to the Isle of Lewis and the Orkneys and visiting and adding to my list of Scots Islands, tell us a bit about your adventures and sort of for those who are thinking about applications to spend either a Fulbright or a Marshall or other stints in Scotland, what you see as being the cultural highlights that are distinctive to the Scots experience.
Oh, Sarah, yeah, are you into Kaylee's, Sarah? I love me
Oh,
a good
I
Kaylee.
love Kaylee's. That was exactly
so
where my brain went first, but yeah. So you've gone
Cultural
to some.
highlight, Kayleeing, without a doubt. I love Kaylee's.
Yeah, for those that don't know what a Kaylee is, it's a gathering where everybody comes together and there is a band that plays, but there is someone who's called the caller who basically dictates the steps that are done in the dance, calls out which dance you're doing. And then the dances are partner dances, and they're sort of the Scottish version of line dancing, I guess, to a certain degree. Yeah. And they're raucous, they're fun, there's lots of celebration and flinging people around and and it's all ages as well. You've got like the little kids and then like the grannies and grandpas, and you don't have to be a dancer to participate.
Yeah, there's plenty of them that are put on by the university here, but also it's just enough of a cultural thing that you can find them almost any day of the week, just somewhere in the city. I did one for New Year's Eve. That was just a blast. Um,
Yeah.
but
That's a huge one for sure, the Ceilidh culture, and also just the music culture here. Music is such a big part of the way of life here. Everybody has what's called their party song, and that's sort of the version of, in America, I often think of like your karaoke jam, but here you can just ask someone, what's your party song? And you'll go to someone's house and hang out, and everyone takes a turn, and it's your chance to kind of like lead everybody in a song. Which is good fun. And then, of course, there's like the amazing hiking and nature that is truly like something out of a fairy tale. It's the most beautiful place I've ever been in the world. And I think on a sunny day in Scotland, there is no place better to be.
oof,
You were
so true.
saying, Claire, that you've gone up to
which is
hills.
I want each of you to name your favorite island that you visited.
Ooh,
I can't say I haven't been to an island yet.
Claire, you're running out of time. We've got to
What
get
are
on
you
this.
doing? I have a road trip planned to Isle of Skye. It's gonna be okay.
that's great.
Come on.
My favorite island, which is really hard to choose because they're all so special. Recently, I was on the Isle of Mull, where they have the Mull Theatre, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous theater, and they do incredible art there. There's such a creative community on this small island. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the whole island is like 2,500 people, of which like 1,500 are in Tobermory, and then they're spread out the rest across the island. But yeah, they have loads of incredible artists that come through there, and it's a beautiful place to be making work and sharing work because the community is such appreciators of art, and it also is just absolutely stunning.
I was so jealous when you were posting this. It wasn't even funny.
Oh, well, you got to come back out here. Come on back.
I haven't told you that is the plan for this summer, but I'm not sure how far north we'll get to go. But that's a different issue. Where are you going on your road trip, Claire? I need to hear about which islands you have on your list.
I unfortunately am only going to Isle of Skye. I've spent a lot of time in Glencoe and a lot of time in the Cairngorms, but I can't say that I've made it out to the islands, partially because I don't have a car. And I am completely controlled most of the time by the whims of my friends, who will text me the night before and say, going on a hike in the Cairngorms, do you want to come? And I say, yes, sir. And I get in the car, and that's about it. But there are these rare times where I have friends coming in town and we decide to rent a car ourselves and go for it. So right now Isle of Skye is the only one on the list, but now I'm thinking I gotta add Isle of Mull. So I'll keep that in mind.
I can tell you that you can take the train from Edinburgh all the way to Ullapool and then the ferry to the Isle of Lewis. And then if you're there on the right day of the week, which sadly, many years ago when I did this, I was not there on the right day of the week to actually take the bus to the butt of Lewis, where the standing stones are. But Stornoway in and of itself was lovely. And then you can take the ferry on to Harris. So you can do this and repeat. If you get yourself to Skye, you can then take the ferry to Harris and Lewis, and then over to Ullapool and back down. Sorry, Emma, you haven't met me enough to know how completely obsessive I am. These two women have had to deal with me long enough that this is not a surprise to them. But
I mean, that's another thing. What you're bringing up right there is train travel. I think especially as Americans, the train culture is something that's very different for us. You can travel all over, and especially if you're a student, they have student rail passes that bring the price way down. So it's really affordable to actually go and travel to different places across the country. And there's also like the ferry system as well. So you can take ferry boats over to the islands, and especially when you get to islands as well, obviously safety is very important, but because everybody knows everybody, there's the ability to also hop in people's cars and go places and stuff. It doesn't take long to get to know people when there's only like 100 on an island, or those smaller communities. But train travel is a big one. And also there's a big cycling culture as well. So if you like to cycle, you can really get around. And it sounds like, Claire, you've already tapped into the hill walking community, which is amazing. You don't even have to be like, you can drive like 20 minutes in a certain direction and you'll already be in the hills and find some gorgeous hikes and views that really range from like needing to have ice picks and like be ice climbing certified to like just putting on your walking shoes and going for a really nice ramble somewhere.
Fun thing to throw out there. I'm taking the train super early on Tuesday morning, and then I'm going to spend 6 days doing the West Highland Way next week, which I'm thrilled about. It's going to be great. And then we're training back. So yeah, it's all just train and walking. It's going to be great.
I've only done part of it. That's really cool that you're going to dive in.
I'm so excited. So excited.
If my husband were on this call, Claire, he would be, see, you always want to be in the islands, but we haven't spent enough time in the Cairngorms and Glencoe because I'm always like, gotta get to the islands. I'm island obsessed.
I'm telling you, I love Glencoe and I love the Cairngorms more than anything. Like the islands look great, but I'm pretty dang happy with what I've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's also some incredible like seafood and stuff. It's if you are someone who enjoys mussels or wild salmon or any of that kind of stuff, and then there's of course haggis, the classic Scottish yeah. Gosh. So, and also whiskey for those that are whiskey drinkers and whiskey lovers. There's incredible glens that are all across the country, and also golf. I'm not a golfer, but there's some beautiful country clubs that I've had tea in, but they're gorgeous.
Have you been to a Highland Games? Have you seen anyone toss a caber? That's the one that persists in cracking me. I've only been once, but
yeah, I've never been to the Highland Games, but I have seen loads of videos of it and have quite a few friends that have made that have specifically always earmarked that in their schedule. It looks amazing. I'd love to go.
It was before, I'm trying to think, but you didn't overlap with so there's another good point about the Scots universities that neither of these women had to sort of paste together fellowships. They had full ride coverage, but there's actually quite a lot of smaller awards that you can compile into funding. And we've had students who've done this over the years, one of whom was a varsity football player who came back and did an MD PhD. He went to Strathclyde outside University of Strathclyde outside Glasgow because, and again, in stories of sort of specialty, they had a group that specialized in research on concussions derived through athletic experience and sort of recovery from those concussions, which was his area of research interest. But they made him, I believe, it may have been Strathclyde and it may have been University of Glasgow, picked him up the coach for their American football team. And he did not take pictures, much to my chagrin, but he like drove this van of a group of Scottish guys all over the Highlands so they could play American football. And I always pictured this as his recruiting from the Highland caber tosser contingency in order to do that. But we also had someone who won something called the St. Andrews Scholarship to go to Edinburgh, not to go to St. Andrews. To go to
Hate St. Andrews. Don't go to St. Andrews.
Unless you're in our philosophy department where two of the faculty have ties to St. Andrews.
It's beautiful.
You're an engineer, so it doesn't matter. You can listen to the inter-Scottish rivalries, intra-Scottish.
I'm just coming off the National Cup for football, which we just lost to against St. Andrews. So I will continue to hate St. Andrews and not apologize for it.
So Emma, I believe Brian in the Health Professions Advising Office. whether or not you do, we have a Scott in the Health Professions Advising Office, and he will stop to tell anyone who asks how he declined St. Andrews to go to Aberdeen because he thought St. Andrews was too toffee-nosed.
It's a beautiful campus though,
It is-
isn't it, as
it is
well?
gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. And it was good enough
It's so
for
pretty. Oh, it's so pretty. I'm sure it's so lovely. I'm sure it's great.
They also have a theater there, the Bayer Theater, that is really wonderful and programs incredible things.
Yeah.
But obviously, as you can tell, rivalry between places is so rife. It's wild to me. I mean, being here in Glasgow, like, and I love going to Edinburgh, but if you are like Glaswegian, you always rip on the folks from Edinburgh. And if you're from Edinburgh, you rip on the people from Glasgow. But then of course, if you're out and about in America and a Scot meets a Scot, it doesn't matter where they're from. They're like, yeah, Scotland.
Oh man.
Yes, the Glaswegians think that the folks in Edinburgh are toffee-nosed Anglophiles, and then the people in Edinburgh think that the folks in St. Andrews are even worse toffee-nosed Anglophiles, and everyone south of the border, of course, is even worse still. So, so she hasn't heard any of this smack talk anyway.
Probably better. Yeah, I can confirm all of the Glasgow Marshall scholars just shit talk Edinburgh the entire time. They really do not like Edinburgh.
Oh goodness. Oh,
Nice.
and it's so fascinating, I think, being on the outside of that, in the sense that not being, born and bred here. Of course, there's everything's new or different. So it's like being able to go to different places and just fall in love with each new city. It's so funny when you suddenly find yourself having to have allegiances for like where you're from or what you do. And it's so true. Yeah.
Next question, and I realize we're at 12:45, and Emma is back, so I'm not sure whether she'll want to pop on with more of her own questions, but you have both had fellowships cohorts of which you were a part, and I'm somewhat aware of what your relationships to those broader UK-wide cohorts have been, but I would appreciate, as we kind of come to the close of the call, if you could talk, Sarah, about sort of what being a Fulbrighter lent particularly to your experience. And Claire, you've already talked in passing about your Marshall cohort, but if you could take a moment talking about what sort of the Marshall cohort experience has been like for you, I'd appreciate it.
It's incredible getting the chance to, meet other people who are so passionate about what they are studying. And so getting such a unique opportunity to become part of a cohort with a bunch of other Fulbrighters, you're meeting so many amazing people. They're all so inspiring. I know that my cohort immediately became, just so close, because you're having this wild sort of, opportunity that's been presented your way, that you're getting to kind of do this thing that you've been really working so hard to do. So to meet other people with those passions is really exciting. I've kept in touch with a lot of folks, and a lot of people come back to Scotland too. And because I now live here, it's always great getting to visit with people and catch up and play host now to them when they come and visit. And equally, you become in the know and in the mix of other opportunities that continue to happen. So I know with Fulbright, there's other events that happen where there's special talks that happen with either politicians or experts in certain fields that you can go and be part of. One of the ones that I will forever be grateful to is getting to do the Fulbright TEDx talks. And so I got a chance to do a TEDx talk on my research and work in serendipity and creative practice, and how we create happy accidents and are able to use that in creative ways and actually harness the creation of accidents. And that has certainly been a gift that keeps on giving in so many ways. And also just becoming a network too, where I've had people who've reached out because they've heard that I've done Fulbright and they're interested in that, or they are former Fulbrighters from other countries, and it becomes a much bigger network and web where the world suddenly feels a lot smaller once you've become part of that.
I can say that the Marshall community was the greatest surprise and probably one of the absolute greatest things in 2 years of fantastic experiences. I never once, I still don't understand how I could meet some people for only an hour and suddenly be like, yep, these are some of my closest friends. I don't know whether it's just that we're all in it together in terms of moving to another country, but I pretty much adore every single Marshall scholar. And it's an insane experience to be like, I've talked to you maybe twice. Yes, you absolutely should come up to Edinburgh and stay in my flat. And that's just how it is, especially with the Marshalls in all of the UK. You got a place to sleep in basically every major city, and it's incredible. And we plan trips together, and we go and visit each other in packs sometimes. But I was just down in London staying with one of my really great Marshall friends, and I can't imagine my time here without them. They are, I mean, everything that Sarah said, they're passionate, they're driven, they're also goofy and bizarre and hilarious people. Everybody is so unique. And I love them to death. I really, really cannot stress enough how great being part of a fellowship community is. It's insane.
You bring up such a good point as well, Claire, of how like it's not just about the academics as well. Obviously, you know, that is what has driven all of us to go down these routes and come to these places to do that work in these spaces, in these programs with these people. But it's also about being curious about the world and adventuring, people who love to travel and people who love to try new things, and people who are welcoming and love to have people come and stay on their couches or in their flats, to cook for each other and try new foods. It's those other kind of almost like soft skills and the other pieces that surround someone's character beyond just their studies.
I say there's stages to meeting other people in a fellowship. Kind of the first stage is when you don't really know them. You're just really intimidated by them. You're like, oh my gosh, look at this crazy list of accomplishments they have. They're going to be crazy. And then you meet them for the first time and you're like, oh my gosh, they're just as crazy as I thought they were. They're insane. They're brilliant. They're smart. You're just in awe of them. And then around the second or the third time that you meet them, you're like, oh wait, but also they're a human and they're really great, super kind, super caring, exactly like you're saying, curious people. And then after that, you kind of transfer to, oh my God, they're crazy, like weird. We're all so weird. It's great. And then at that point, you're best friends, and it's perfect. It's just great.
I feel like I should stop recording now because I think that was the best promo for fellowships I could ever dream up. So I would like the two of you to stay on, but I am going to take a second to stop the recording.